All right, let's dive in. Today we're taking a deep dive into Lisabi, the uprising,
Mm.
and, I know what you might be thinking. Another historical drama, but trust me, this one is different. It's a 2024 film that tells the story of Lisabi,
Wasabi.
a leader who challenged the mighty Oyo Empire back in 18th century Yorubaland, which is modern-day Nigeria.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating how the film just throws you right into the struggles of the Egba people. Like imagine constantly living under threat of forced labor,
Right.
crushing taxes,
Yeah.
and the Oyo military just like always looming.
Always present.
It's such a powerful depiction of oppression that it really makes you connect with the Egba people and their desire for change
Right.
right away.
Yeah, it totally sets the stage for that classic underdog story.
Right.
And then we meet Lisabi, and the film avoids portraying him as some, mythical hero.
Mhm.
And instead, we see him as a person who's deeply affected by the suffering he sees around him. So what were some of the things that really pushed him toward action? What stood out to you in the film?
Well, there's that one really powerful scene where Lisabi sees Oyo soldiers brutalizing a family because they couldn't pay their taxes.
Oh, wow.
And that's like a turning point for him. It's where his outrage becomes determination to act. You can really see it in him. The shift from despair to
Wow.
resolve.
Yeah.
It's palpable.
Yeah, those small moments, the personal stakes, are what makes the big picture so powerful. So we have oppression, we have this leader emerging, and the seeds of rebellion are being sown. But, how does he actually start rallying others to his cause? It's not like you could just tweet out a call to action.
Exactly. And this is where his understanding of Yoruba traditions comes in, right? Instead of making big pronouncements, he starts by holding these secret meetings with village elders
Ah,
and with influential figures. He uses the existing networks of trust and their shared grievances to actually build a base for this rebellion.
so he's working within the system, but strategically.
Yes.
Using those existing power structures to his advantage. It's a lot more nuanced than just a mass uprising.
Yeah, much more subtle. And one great example of this is how he uses this Yoruba concept of Ori,
Ori.
which basically means like personal destiny and collective responsibility. By framing this rebellion as a fight for the Egba people's destiny, he taps into this deep cultural belief system and turns like individual grievances into a shared purpose.
That's powerful. It's not just about political freedom. It's about fulfilling a shared destiny, you know? But even with this strategic approach, it must have been so hard to convince people to go up against this mighty empire. What were some of the biggest challenges he faced in those early stages?
Well, fear was a huge one.
Oh, of course.
I mean, the Oyo Empire was known for being ruthless, and a lot of the Egba people were just terrified of what would happen if they failed.
Yeah.
So Lisabi had to overcome that fear, not just with, speeches, but by building trust, demonstrating competence, offering a vision of a future that was actually worth fighting for.
Yeah, it's a reminder that you need more than just passion to build a successful movement. You need strategy, you need to address people's fears, and you need to give them a vision of something better.
Absolutely, and that's what makes Lisabi such a compelling leader. He doesn't just talk, he takes action, and he earns the trust of his followers.
So the rebellion's gaining momentum, the people are united, fear is giving way to hope, and we're heading towards a confrontation with the Oyo Empire. But, they were such a powerful force. What options did Lisabi even have? Could they really win a head-on fight against them?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. See, Lisabi knew that they couldn't win a conventional war against the Oyo Empire. They were just too strong. So they had to find a different way to fight, a way that would actually play to their strength and exploit the weaknesses of their enemy. He knew the terrain, you see, and he understood guerrilla warfare.
So instead of marching into open battle, they took a different approach, right? One based on agility and surprise. What were some of the tactics they used?
Well, one tactic that stands out was using the dense forests and, all those rivers that crisscross Yorubaland.
Right.
The Egba warriors knew that terrain like the back of their hands, and they would use that to their advantage. They'd launch these lightning rays on the Oyo supply lines and outposts, hit them hard and fast,
Wow.
and then they'd disappear back into the forest before reinforcements could even arrive.
It's like they turned the environment itself into a weapon.
Exactly. They used their knowledge of the land to outmaneuver this larger, slower enemy, and it worked. They really disrupted the Oyo Empire's ability to fight a conventional war.
I can only imagine how frustrating that must have been for the Oyo commanders.
Hmm.
facing an enemy they could never quite catch.
Oh, absolutely. And those early victories, even though they were small, they had a huge impact on morale.
On both sides.
Yeah, yeah. For the Egza people, it was proof they could fight back, that they could win.
And for the Oyo, well,
It must have been demoralizing, to say the least.
yeah. But, thinking about the Egba warriors themselves, those early wins must have been so empowering for them. To see that even a mighty empire like Oyo could be challenged.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It gave them this sense of hope, but it wasn't easy. This kind of warfare, this constant threat of retaliation, always having to be on guard, it takes a toll.
Psychologically, especially. I mean, living under that kind of pressure.
Yeah. There's this scene, it really captures that tension. A group of Egba warriors, they're celebrating a victory, but there's this underlying anxiety. They know the Oyo won't stay quiet for long.
Every victory comes at a price.
Exactly.
And they're constantly aware of that.
And that's where Lisabi's leadership really makes a difference. He understood the military strategy, of course, but he also knew how to keep morale up, to keep hope alive.
So he was more than just a general, right? He was a leader who understood the emotional toll of war, the human cost.
Absolutely. He inspired loyalty, not through fear, but through care for his people.
That's a leadership style we could use more of today.
I agree.
But we're talking about a rebellion against a powerful empire here. So at some point, they have to confront each other directly. How does the film build up to that final battle?
Well, as the Egba racked up more victories, the Oyo got more and more frustrated. They sent larger forces to try to crush the rebellion.
But it didn't work.
Nope. Lisabi and his warriors kept outmaneuvering them, using their tactics and knowledge of the terrain to their advantage.
It's that classic David and Goliath scenario.
Mhm.
But the Oyo Empire couldn't just let this go on forever.
Right. And they didn't. The Oyo emperor, furious about these setbacks, decided to send a massive army. Led by his best general, this was it, the final showdown.
It was do or die time for both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did Lisabi prepare for this? He was known for his strategic thinking. How does that come into play in the final battle?
Well, he knew he couldn't beat the Oyo army head-on, so he had to find a way to even the odds. Use the terrain, use his knowledge of the enemy. He had to outsmart them.
Wow. He was playing chess, not checkers.
Right. And he came up with this brilliant plan. He chose this battlefield that at first seems like a terrible choice for the Egba. It's a narrow valley surrounded by steep hills.
Sounds like a trap.
It was. See, he knew the Oyo army would be so confident, so eager to crush the rebellion, they'd charge straight into that valley, looking for a quick victory.
So he was using their arrogance against them.
Exactly. It was a risky gamble, but Lisabi knew what he was doing. He'd planned it all out. He was using the terrain to funnel the enemy into a spot where their numbers would actually work against them.
I can see it now. The Oyo army, packed tight in that valley, vulnerable to attacks from those hills.
That's exactly what happened. As the Oyo advanced, Egba warriors hidden in the hills rained down arrows and spears. The Oyo, trapped, couldn't maneuver. It was a devastating defeat for them.
Wow, what a victory. Against all odds.
It's legendary. This is the kind of battle they tell stories about.
It really shows Lisabi's strategic brilliance to turn that situation into a win. But battles are never just about strategy, are they? They're emotional. How did the film show that side of the final confrontation?
Yeah, the film is amazing at capturing that emotional intensity. You see it all, the fear on the Egba warriors' faces, but also their determination. The Oyo soldiers realizing they've been outmaneuvered, their desperation, the losses on both sides, and then the elation of the Egba victory.
Sounds intense.
It is. And it's not just about the spectacle of the battle either. The film also really dives into the spiritual side of the conflict. For example, before the battle, there's this scene where Lisabi performs a ritual. He's calling on the Yoruba ancestors, asking for their protection and guidance.
So for the Egba people, this wasn't just about land or politics, right? It was about their culture, their way of life, their survival.
Exactly. The film does a great job of weaving in those cultural and spiritual elements. It shows you what was really at stake for them.
Okay, so the Egba forces win this improbable victory. But what about the aftermath? What happens when the fighting is over? How does the film handle that?
Well, it doesn't shy away from the complexities. See, victory creates its own challenges. Rebuilding, healing.
Right, because a war ending doesn't mean the suffering ends, too.
Exactly. And those scars can last for generations. Plus, they have this big question now. What kind of society do they want to build now that they're free from Oyo rule?
This is a huge turning point for them. They fought hard for this freedom.
Hmm.
But how do they govern themselves now?
And here's where Lisabi's character is so interesting. He doesn't want to be a king. He doesn't want to be a dictator. He realizes that true leadership is about giving others power, about sharing responsibility.
So he's not looking to just replace one authoritarian rule with another. He has a different vision.
Exactly. He wants something more democratic, more participatory. And once again, he turns to Yoruba traditions and values for guidance.
So he's looking to their own history.
Yeah. He finds inspiration in those traditional systems of governance, where power was shared among elders and community leaders.
So what does that look like in practice? How does he try to shape this new government?
One key thing he does is set up a council of elders, representatives from all the different clans and villages. They advise him on how to govern. He also creates local assemblies where people can come together, voice their concerns, and participate in decisions.
Sounds like he's laying the foundation for a much more inclusive system, one that blends traditional practices with new ideas.
That's a great way to put it. He's trying to build a system that honors the past, but also meets the needs of the present, and that can adapt as those needs change.
This is such an important point because it shows that getting rid of a tyrant isn't enough, right? You need to create systems that give people power, that allow them to have a voice.
Absolutely. And that takes leadership that's willing to share power, to trust the people. That's Lee Sabi's real legacy.
A legacy that goes far beyond the battlefield.
Way beyond.
Welcome back. So we've talked about the rebellion itself, the battles, and Lee Sabi's vision for a new society. But I want to get into something we haven't touched on much yet. The cultural impact of this film, both for the Yoruba community and beyond.
Yeah, that's a great point. One thing that really stands out about this film is just how authentic it feels.
Oh, totally.
The whole thing's in the Yoruba language, and they really went all out to accurately portray the clothing, the customs, the traditions, everything.
Yeah, and that comes through, especially in those scenes with the ceremonies and the rituals, It doesn't feel like a Hollywood set dressed up to look like Africa.
Right.
It feels real.
It feels like a living culture.
Mhm.
And that authenticity, that has had a big impact on how people see the film, especially, within the Yoruba community.
Makes sense.
People have talked about how moved they were to see their history and culture represented like that, with respect, with
Right.
accuracy.
Yeah, representation matters.
It really does. Seeing yourself in a film like this, it can be really powerful.
Validating.
Exactly. And, for a lot of younger Yoruba people, this film has actually introduced them to a part of their history they didn't even know about before.
Oh, wow.
It's like it sparked this whole renewed interest in their heritage.
That's amazing. Like it opened a door to the past.
Exactly. And that connection to the past, it's so important, especially now when the world's changing so fast.
It can give you a sense of grounding, of where you came from.
Right. And this film also reminds us that history, it's not just dates and names in a textbook, It's about real people, their struggles, their triumphs, and their culture.
Their story.
Their stories, yeah. And speaking of that, I think this film has also started some really important conversations about how those historical events are actually relevant today.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about that too. We see these people rising up against an oppressive empire, fighting for their freedom. And it's hard not to think about all the struggles for justice and equality happening right now, all over the world.
Exactly. It's a timeless struggle, isn't it?
It is. And it's universal. That desire for a just society that transcends cultures, transcends time.
Absolutely. The film reminds us that. And, I think that's a powerful message, especially for young people today.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out their place in the world, their purpose. And this film shows them that, even ordinary people can make a difference. Even the biggest, most powerful systems can be challenged.
And it reminds us what it takes to do that. Courage, resilience, people coming together.
Yep. Those are values we need now just as much as they did back then.
So yeah, Lee Sabi, The Uprising, it's not just a historical drama. It's a film that really makes you think about the world today.
It challenges you. It inspires you.
And maybe even pushes you to take action yourself.
Maybe even that. It stays with you long after you've seen it.
Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Lee Sabi, The Uprising. If you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to check it out. It's powerful. It's moving. It'll make you think about history, about leadership, and about the human spirit in a whole new way.
And remember, the fight for freedom and justice, it's never over. It takes all of us to keep working towards that. So thank you for listening.
This has been The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious.